Awesome. Diana, did you go on this one yet?
Um, I don't think so, unless I spoke and I forgot maybe, but
No, I think
No,
I
I don't
think
think you did.
I'm
That's
sorry,
why
that's my fault. You
I
were the
don't know,
last.
but I felt like I had said it
I
too
was
much,
like,
and I was
"What?"
like, let me just lay low for a
No,
little.
you I'm so I confused that you were the last person to speak before I asked the question. So I thought
That's what I mean. I was like, this is too much.
Deja.
Hey, hello everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to this interview, this sort of panel discussion about writing sketch comedy / writing for children's media. And I want to say this interview you're about to hear was recorded on Sunday, December 15th. And that was before the announcement was made that Warner Media would not be renewing distribution of Sesame Street. So there would have been a big question and a big point of conversation for the three other writers that I interviewed, because we all also happen to be former writers with Sesame Workshop. So I will say, probably on behalf of all writers, creators involved with Sesame Street, it's a bummer that Warner is no longer going to be distributing the program, the TV show, but we'll see where Sesame ends up, and hopefully it'll be in a positive place where kids can still find stories to be told, adventures to be had, and us as writer creators can find an avenue to continue building our careers, serving children, and finding our inner child.
Awesome. Okay. Welcome to our comedy and characters conversation and sketch comedy world. I'm Dejan Tesfagiorgis. I'm a Sesame Workshop fellow, and I have with me three wonderful guests who will be speaking about their experience in both writing sketch comedy, playwriting, improv, and working and children's writing. And so I'm going to start out with an introduction. Each of you can wave. We'll say hi. We'll say hi to everybody. And then we'll just have a nice discussion, kind of popcorn things ahead. And I've already gotten a few people reaching out, asking questions about the workshop and how to prepare. So I'm hoping that this conversation can be an easy resource to point people towards, to say, hey, here's what we experienced from both the workshop, in our own sketch and writing world, and then how to keep up our writing in the sort of balance between adult comedy and children's writing. So I'll start with Utkarsh Rajawat is a Princess Grace Award finalist for playwriting and a Sesame Street Writers Room Fellow in 2019. They have also played with a bunch of very cool theater groups like Cohesion, Single Carrot, and the Baltimore Shakespeare Factory. And we have been on the same shows at the People's Improv Theater way back before the pandemic. Now based in New York, they performed with sketch comedy with Boogie Manja, Story Pirates, and they cooked up a play with the Pipeline Theater's Play Lab. And you wrote for, give me the name of the children's show that you were writing for as well.
I wrote for Alma's Way, Lila and the Loop, a couple other shows I can't remember right now.
And a
couple
other shows.
Pull up my resume. Cut that.
No, it's okay. It's okay. And it's a couple. I'll cut it and a couple others. And a couple others. You just love the work you're doing so much. It's hard to keep track of all the work. So claps for Utkarsh for being here. Thank you so much. Kaylee Morrison was born in North Carolina, Sesame Workshop Fellow from 2023, and is a recipient of the Pitt Theater SNL Scholarship. I believe we met through the Pitt and doing it was an improv class and an impressions class over the pandemic, and spent most of her childhood playing outside and obsessing over TV and movies, igniting Kaylee's passion to seek and make magic. She followed that instinct to pursue a degree in professional theater and a career on stage and on screen. Kaylee's an enrolled member of the Waccamaw Siouan tribe, or the People of the Falling Star. Thank you for being here. Boom, boom, boom. Snaps all around. And Diana Aiden. Yeah, definitely. I have to work on my pauses. Diana Aiden is a writer, comedian, performer, and a staff writer on the animated series Alma's Way from Fred Rogers Productions, in addition to being on House Improv Team Grunch at UCB Theater.
Yay!
She also performed at the Pit. And fun story, we initially met doing a virtual sketch for the Toronto Sketch Fest in 2022. And as a child of Syriac immigrants from Turkey, Diana studied teaching at Columbia University's Teachers College and journalism at NYU. This was followed by comedy at the Second City Film School and at Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. where she unveiled lovable, zany characters inspired by her unknown heritage, quiet suburban upbringing, and that one time she had brain surgery, which maybe we won't get to, but that's the bio from the website. So I want to thank all y'all for being here and for chatting.
Yay!
And hopefully our backgrounds and unique backgrounds can be a foundation for people to find their own stories. So first question for the panel, how'd I do on your intros?
That was amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, I want him to always introduce me.
Yeah, it was great. I was like, I know all of this. Where did you find it?
On
Was
your
familiar.
website, oddly enough, on your.
I should really log on to that thing every once in a while.
Oh, these WordPress templates, they keep changing everything.
Yeah, thumbs up.
Felt good. Thumbs up. Awesome. And I hope that this could be a nice little intimate introduction. We each have very different backgrounds, coming from different physical places and where we are, in our current space. So maybe I'll start off, and then we can just kind of popcorn questions. If something inspires you to A to C to someone else, we'll just have this as a conversation. But maybe we could start off with let's say comedy shows do you like, and then what children's shows influences your writing? Maybe we'll start with that, and I'll jump into Diana.
Like kids comedy or like any comedy?
I would say yes, either adult and kid. So we'll do it as two separate
Okay,
categories.
yeah. Kids, I'm very partial to Alma's Way because I'm so in it right now, and I'm just like, this show's amazing. So I'm really into that right now for kids shows. I also love Hilda and Gravity Falls. Anything like a little zany Pinecone and Pony, I think is really fun and oddball. And then for like non-kid shows, I love Hacks right now. Uh-oh. I
That's
don't
okay.
think that went
They'll be-
over well.
I hope they'll
Pinecone
be
and
back.
Pony is
Great.
not for everyone. But yeah, I love Hacks. I thought it was so funny. I'm a big New Girl fan, so I just always watch that like regularly. Like I just have it on in the background, and that really influences all my writing. I think I just love to like see how they use flashbacks a lot, and how they do bits in a group. Like that really affects me, I think, in my writing. And then I love like shows like What We Do in the Shadows and like Nathan For You, Kunk on Earth, like all those like oddball hosts and stuff like that. So yeah, those are my favorites.
Yeah, I do like that. In the Nathan For Yous and Kunk on Earth, you're wondering who is like when the banana man's playing the straight man. Like you wonder who's steering the ship.
Yeah, exactly. I know, I love when like expectations are like thrown off, or like things are like I did an improv show or a comedy show the other weekend at the Pit, and one of the performers told like this terrifying story that you weren't sure if it was real or fake, and like the audience was just kind of like laughing a little but too nervous to laugh, and I thought it was like the most wonderful thing to have that feeling where they're like, is this funny? So yeah, I love to like be able to do that kind of comedy.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's go to Kaylee next. Good with your connection? Yeah, we're all good.
Okay. Yeah, so for kids comedy, first of all, I was definitely grew up a PBS kid. We did not have cable in my house. And I'm very nostalgic. So I still really enjoy a lot of the writing and shows that I watched as a kid. And I remember having a lot of great laughs at Arthur. I know if I were an Arthur character, I'd be Buster. I don't know. He always was so funny and innocent to me. And I just found that humorous. I also loved like how Arthur like displayed anxiety. Like, yeah, there were always like cutaways to what they were worried about, and you'd find out it's nothing to worry about after all. Let's see. I mean, Sesame Street also throughout the years has also been not only heartfelt but also really funny as well. If we're talking more grown-up stuff, lifelong SNL fan. I have my favorites throughout the years, but that will always have a grip on my heart and my comedy soul. I love Ted Lasso, and I did not expect to love it because it really is a great blend of humor and sincerity
Mhm.
and empathy as well. And I've never seen that as quite as successfully blended. So I love that. I'm a big fan of like older television as well. Grew up watching all the older shows. So Carol Burnett is a huge inspiration for me. I also love a sitcom. Like I recently did a rewatch of Everybody Loves Raymond, and the characters are just so like defined and fine. Same, I love the Golden Girls. Like I love where the characters, like we know who they are, we understand what the relationship is to each other, and with good writing, it never goes out of style. So I will watch those shows over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think the great thing about sitcoms, to tie it to animation writing a little bit, is like when I watch Sanford and Son or Golden Girls with my grandma, a lot of the action takes place you're in the kitchen of the house or the living room of the
Mhm.
house. And to tie it to animation, like animation, they have to build backgrounds and build all this stuff. Everything you see is built. So if you can limit it to those two locations, that's a great challenge for good dialogue and a great story to limit it to those two locations.
Totally.
Awesome. We're reconnected. So, Rutkarsh, can you give me your what do you like? Adult comedy shows you like? What kids shows do you like?
The answers are a lot of my favorite comedies, period, are ultimately kids shows. I watch a lot of kids TV, so sometimes it's just like the same answer. But some of my favorite shows: Adventure Time, Steven Universe. Also love Hilda, Craig of the Creek. Something I've been watching recently and really adore. We Bear Bears, etc., etc. Um, in and like I also love Alma, wrote for Alma, etc. So same with Diana. Um, I think like adult shows that I enjoy. I don't know if I would recommend it to anyone now because like how problematic they are, etc., and how poorly it's aged. But It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia was a big influence when I was initially when I was watching it back in college or whatever. Um, I also have not been watching a lot of adult TV recently, so I'm failing to think of any other comedies. Like the most recent show I watched was Arcane, which is not a comedy. And I mostly just like how it looks because the animation's really
The
pretty.
animation's wild. Yeah,
It's so beautiful.
it
Yeah,
looks
yeah.
so beautiful.
And a lot of the writing, I'm like, I don't know what you people are thinking, but it looks so good.
It looks great. Hey, if Arcane wants to hire all four of us, we'll take it. But yeah. It is the visual style is something that really sells the show for me and was like the initial interest after seeing all the posters in the subway and all that. Awesome. Maybe we'll just start like what are some lessons in how do you approach writing overall and then specifically children's writing? Because something I've found is the script I submitted for the Sesame Workshop and I've submitted around, there's maybe 2 jokes in it and 11 pages. And I thought like when I write a sketch, okay, you have your premise, you have your kind of conflict, beat 1 of the joke, beat 2 of the joke, beat 3 of the joke, and then you wind it up nicely. Okay. What I imagined in writing a story for children is your premise, the conflict, and instead of a joke, it was like, what's either a painful moment that I can help the kid later come out of, or a vulnerability or an emotion I can help them explore. So instead of this being a joke, that's like a joke premise, it's every beat, like a 5-paragraph essay, every beat explores some element of the premise I've laid out in front. So I'm curious how you all have thought of writing adult comedy versus children's. Whoever has an answer.
I know yeah, I don't know that I have one, but I could talk and see what comes out. But
Yeah.
I definitely feel like a different responsibility when I'm writing for children. Like there's definitely a need to really serve them. Whereas I guess when I'm writing for adults, I'm like serving my own humor and ideas a bit more, and just hopefully it resonates. But not currently being a child, some might disagree with that, but I really have to like put myself in their shoes and think about like their needs. And I've worked a lot in education and with kids, so I've been around them a lot, and I like to think my inner child is very present. And so sometimes it is like kind of flashing back, like what did I need and not have, and starting from that place, and that's served me well, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like my the child me is very close. Like my childhood is still very close, where it's like I'm always looking back to when I write for kids, but even for adult stuff too. And then I think I do think about comedy a lot for kids, and like it's the same with adults, but I always want to make sure that like it's respects kids and is never like poking fun at them or poking down in a way or something. But I do think kid shows are so funny, and like kids are so funny, and
Yeah.
there's so much physical comedy and stuff like that. So yeah, so when I write for kids in animation, especially, like I'm always thinking like what could be the physical comedy? Like how can I bring that out more? Like what's going on in the background? Is there like anything funny that they're doing? And I think that I was surprised when I first got into kids writing, like how important structure is, because I think you see animation and you're like, it must just be like people coming up with all kind of goofy ideas. And so I think, like, as you all know, Susan Kim, like her notes on structure, and like had a structure an 11-minute show has really like come in handy, and like just making sure like that you kind of meet all the points of the story and stuff. But it's very similar to adults, like that has to follow an act structure too, and all that kind of good stuff.
I think like going off of that, very similarly, learning through Susan Kim, who's amazing, et cetera, et cetera. The main thing that stuck with me through kids was like split everything into threes. I feel like that was Susan's big thing.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like
her big
three
thing.
acts, and every act has 3 beats, blah blah blah. And then if you're like struggling with like things within a beat, you break that beat to 3 micro beats. And so in my head, I'm like a sketch for adults or for children is just 1/3 of a kid's episode, or like a kid's episode is just 3 sketches that are building upon each other. And then obviously with the kids show, there's so much depending on the show you're writing for, like curriculum goals or particular things that the show is trying to do. So I feel like that changes how I'm writing, and then obviously the very basic stuff of like, don't use swear words, don't show gore, don't do anything violent or particularly mean. I think maybe that's the main difference between my like quote unquote adult writing and like kids writing, is maybe my adult writing is like meaner and people are allowed to be like very mean to each other, and in kids writing it's like, yeah, you can't do that, because that's like poor role modeling.
You gotta have some kid gloves. When I was in the Peter Hirsch, so was head writer for a number of years for Arthur, and when I was in the PBS fellowship, he was one of our guest speakers, and I asked him about how do you feel about, you put all this care and feeling, and we talking about character development, and it's 20-year series. How do you feel that now, like maybe an 8-year-old with the phone knows Arthur as, oh, that meme with the guy with the clenched fist? And he laughed and was like, well, it's keeping Arthur alive, and hopefully they would still, look at the context of the episode and still realize, some rules in children's writing he follows is like, you never show violence. So then if I went and watched the clip, and the full clip, it doesn't show Arthur hitting his sister, but you do see his fist clench, you see the emotion, and then you see DW fall back in the next cut. So never show violence. You don't show any like intimacy, which I think is to be understood. And then also, swears and language is kept to appropriate. So an appropriate level for whatever age group. So those were 3 big things that he pointed out, and sort of how I think about, I'll write kind of the mean version for me. And then when editor brain comes into place, that to me is like, okay, cool. Now let me imagine I'm 6 and maybe my parents are choosing something for me to watch, and I'm trying to, like, they don't want a bunch of MFs and S's and G and dams and all this stuff in the media. So for me, that's like writer brain. Editor brain is different from writer brain. Can you all talk about the story? So we're all Sesame Workshop alums, which feels pretty good. That's like a nice feather in the cap, a good experience. We all talked about working with Susan Kim, and yeah, I went back, watched her like "Are You Afraid of the Dark" episode, and I was like, I remember this when I was a kid. It's like 30-year veteran of children's writing. Do you all remember the scripts that you applied to the workshop with? Could you speak about them, and I'd be happy to share as well. Because I think someone that would be watching this podcast would have an interest in, like, okay, well, what kind of stories can I tell? And so what was the script you submitted with, and then sort of what's the mental place you went to in writing that script?
Yeah, I think I remember I was at the Second City at the time, and one of my friends sent me like the Sesame Workshop application. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to find the script to submit for this. And I had this idea that I had been like noodling on for like maybe 10 years, called Unibrow, about like a girl with a magical unibrow, inspired by my hairy childhood. And so I wrote that script over like Christmas break, and the rules said like, oh, it only had to be like 13 pages, and I was like, excellent. So I got to 13 pages and stopped. But I just thought, like, to apply to something like that, I wanted something that was like they always say like something that only you could tell, or that's very much like my culture and my experience. Like, I also had brain surgery when I was young, and so like I've always had like hair themes in my work. Like, I grew up having lots of hair because, you know, I'm Middle Eastern, and then suddenly I lost a lot of hair, and so I wanted to play with like that dynamic of hair being judged for even having too much or too little, and like hair means so much. So I thought, okay, let me try to write this, because at least it shows who I am as a writer and like my kind of oddball sense of humor. So that's like my main advice for people to apply. Like, pick a story that just feels like so you and your personality, even if it's not like completely fleshed out yet, but at least it shows like your humor, your point of view, maybe your background and stuff like that. So yeah, and then I ended up doing more with that idea, and it got optioned. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Awesome. Who else would like to share?
I'll go. Yeah, so the piece that I submitted for my fellowship application was called Rhodey Stands Up. And Rhodey was the name of my great-grandmother, but it wasn't about her. I just stole her name. But at the time when I sat down to write it, I had been doing a lot of like self-reflection of what's going on with me, and what do I need to do to fix it, and all that. And so I was thinking a lot about like childhood and all the pieces that were at play there. And I'm a born introvert. I've always been a super quiet person, but that's not all I am. Like, I also am a performer, and people have a hard time seeing one if they're only used to seeing the other. And our society is like really anti-introvert, like, and then sometimes it's malicious and sometimes it's not. So I wanted to write a story about a little girl who is very introverted and quiet, but very capable, and people don't intentionally exclude her, but she is excluded just because she's not the squeakiest wheel, you know. And she's also, because of my own background, she's also Native, and so she's also dealing with some issues of feeling invisible with that, because she lives in an urban environment and not on a reservation. So she feels kind of different from everybody, and she unintentionally gets kind of excluded at school, goes home, talks to her parents about it, and she's really struggling because she wants to feel connected to people around her, to her culture, and she's just not quite sure how to do it. But thankfully, there's a school talent show coming up, and she decides that she wants to do a stand-up set, and she goes and she rocks the house, and she proves to everybody that, not only the squeaky wheels deserve attention. There's lots of diamonds in the rough as well. That's how she connects. So it's really a story about finding ways to connect and communicate.
That's great, and that little bit of initiative that one can take, where your stand up is can be a very vulnerable thing, and taking some initiative and some ownership to say, okay, I hope this works, and having that end act 2 moment, where you step out on stage and then there's probably a little freeze there.
Yeah. No, she takes a big leap, but she knows she can do it, and she wants everyone to see that she can do it, but she already knows, and so she's brave and goes for it, and it works out well for little Rhodey.
Awesome.
I would love to see like an entire YouTube channel dedicated to kids stand up. Kids stand up sounds like such a good idea. Let's just like
I wish I remember the jokes. I don't remember them now, but
oh man. My sample that I submitted, I think similarly, I was like at my family's place in Pittsburgh, and then someone had just sent me, Roxy Simons, who was on my Bookie Manja team, had sent me, it was like, you should apply to this. So I think I was also approaching it mostly as like, I know a comedy person who did this, so like that's what I was trying to lead with, was like, okay, I'm gonna write something, whatever, like a sketch except more serious. Mine's is called Wormhole, which unfortunate in the era of 5,000 multidimensional media spin-offs or whatever. But it was about a kid. It was like inspired by when I was very young. I had a friend who had cancer, and that was it. Like, maybe honestly not my story to tell, because I was not the one who's going through it. But like, I remember being whatever sad about that, and so it was about being like a kid at his friend's funeral, and then there's like a worm that like crawls onto his head or something, and they fly to space, and then he talks to his dead friend for a little bit, and then we return to the funeral for a beat. I think in terms of what I was thinking, I was trying to I guess also like try to write something particular that like was truthful to my experience in some way. B, I was trying to be funny, so I was trying to add in a lot of jokes. I don't know if I necessarily succeeded or not. I've not returned to that thing in a very long time, but was trying to add in a lot of jokes. Also, and like we also trying to show my sensibility of like, I like Adventure Time, basically, like I like Cookie Hairbrain, blah 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 blah. And the only thing, I'm sure the structure was like god awful, but like there was like some bare bones, like there's an act 1, an act 2, and an act 3. Like there's like starting the funeral, being in space, talking to their friend. Yeah, and I think the advice I got was all like, write something you're passionate about. Yeah, I feel like I wrote a lot of it on my phone in the Celtics app back when that was like very free.
Back when it was free.
Yeah.
Where everyone took advantage of the monthly subscription model. Like Celtics was like, yeah, great. My first UCB sketches on Celtics was like, great. I just ignore pro.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, it is writing about something very vulnerable. And you sent that script to me when I was debating what piece to submit for Sesame. So thanks for sharing that a lot. And it was like, oh my gosh, I can do this, and like see on the page both the excitement of the Adventure Time like thing, let's go to space, let's go to these different worlds, and then also the vulnerability of, okay, the worm's not giving the answers, but your protagonist, who was either 8 or 10, was it 8 or 10? Do you remember?
Probably 8.
Probably 8. Yeah, the protagonist still finding, with some guidance, finding the words to deal with this loss.
Yeah, thanks.
And then, of course, there's a dog that can shapeshift, and you directly took that from Adventure Time. You put a big Jake the dog in
the
there.
main characters are named Jake and Finn,
Yeah.
and I actually wrote like 8 seasons of it.
There's an Ice King. We got Rebecca Sugar to do the reboot. It works.
I made so much money off of that sample. So much merch. I sold so much merch.
Adventure Worm. And then the script the script I submitted, and it was largely after speaking with the three of you. So this was the second time I applied for this workshop. The first time I submitted something that was very like the adventure side of Adventure Time, very like it's about like kind of the world of Black Panther meets the adventures of Adventure Time. So exploring Africa's 54 countries. And then for this last year, I submitted a script that's about the idea of losing a mentor, where they're physically there, but mentally they're not there. So it was a kid visiting is a sibling who was incarcerated. And so the barrier to the kid seeing this sibling and mentor was the phone, the disassociation through the phone. So I sort of mapped the world of Into the Spider-Verse, where you have all these different genres, and people like essentially like the prison guards were replaced by the bad guys in the phone, and oh boy, I wore orange too. The other inmates were replaced by another character from his video game. So it's like kind of a disassociation thing. And then you're rooting for the kid to be able to see the tough situation in order to deal with it. But without being able to see it, you're miles away from, seeing your role model in a different light than they have been for your whole life. So yeah, also based on some truth, and it was a vulnerable story. I didn't really know who it was for when I started writing it, but then after sharing words with you all, I was like, okay, well, this is something I know I can write pretty well. And it did come up in my interview, like, hey man, do you actually know about this? I was like, yeah, I got some familiarity. So it is like you got to go to a vulnerable place. And I have like a soundtrack I listen to. Same thing when I edit and work on it, because that really helps me. No joke, it's the same song over and over, the same 3-minute song that I listen to over and over. It's just a habit of writing, and because this is like an 11-page thing, I just have the song Frankie and Annette that plays over and over from Casey Daniels.
I'm still waiting for Spotify to come out with a feature that once you listen to a song over and over again, it sends you a notification that says, "Are you okay? You listened to this song 497 times in a row."
So yeah, just working on a feature length. That's it. Just
Right.
It's like those Netflix pop-ups, like, "Hey, you still watching?"
Right, exactly.
Been listening to a lot of Beyonce. So go ahead.
I was just gonna say I wanted to come with a Klonopin in the mail.
Awesome. So I hope these provide some examples of, looking into oneself for this. And a cool exercise that Susan did with us is like, she had us do 3 rounds of this. So the first thing was like, imagine you're 6 and it's the first day of school and you left your backpack at home. What are 3 things you would say? Something like that. And then who are 3 role models in your life? And then we wrote those down and discussed. And then what are maybe 3 times you cried? What are 3 times you cried as a kid? So those were like great things even to tap into. What are the emotions that we are leading to, and get ourselves into that mindset of a child before we write for children as adults. Because to a kid, it triggered a memory where I remembered it was Halloween and I'm in the 2nd grade and I'd forgotten my like eye black stuff, and I started crying because my vampire costume wasn't going to be perfect. And I remember the teacher being like, "Here, you can use whatever my eyeliner. How about this?" And she gave me like mascara or something, or maybe it was eyeshadow. She put something under my eyes that still made them. It did the job, and I was like, "Oh, okay, great, that's it." But to still like allow your kids, your characters to like think that the world's ending because they forgot their permission slip and they can't go on the field trip. So let those things happen in a truthful way. Yeah. Do you know the script you wrote in the program? Or do you remember from the program that's sort of stuck with you in subsequent writing?
Yeah. Oh. The script that I wrote in the program, it was called Sisters Baklava, and it was about these three sisters who had a magical baklava factory in their basement. And then that was really fun to write. What I remember from the program, I think Susan had this story mountain about like how like the character tries like at least 3 times, and it's like try, fail, try, fail, try, fail. I still have that like image on my desktop that I always go back to. And she also just gave so many practical notes, like how much a script costs, like what things mean, like what's a D2, what's like a polished draft, like things that it seems like you would just know, but like I had no idea. And it was anytime afterwards that I had a freelance script, I was always like searching my notes, like what is like a bridge age range, or like what's a polished draft, or like is this money okay for this? And so yeah, so I just still have all her notes. And that's another tip, like just to label the notes so like it's Susan's advice, like which lesson it was. I don't know. But it's nice to have Susan with me through all her notes that I always look back on.
I think
Yeah,
very similarly. Oh no, you go.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think Susan did such a great job of like providing us with tools. I always say she's one of the best teachers I've ever had, like in any educational environment, because yeah, she has provided us with so many things to apply. The script I wrote, I remember we had like the assignment was we had to come up with 3 ideas and essentially pitch them like a little log line.
That's week 2, I think. That's for us. So that was our second week.
Yeah, I'm sure it was similar for us, if not the same. I just don't remember off the top of my head. But I remember coming up with the first 2 ideas relatively easily. Like I was really excited about them, and thought like surely it's going to be one of these 2. And the third I kind of just threw together because I needed a third, and I was kind of tapped creatively at the time. And then we had to present the 3 ideas, and by far the biggest and most enthusiastic response was to, of course, my third idea. And I was really taken aback. I was like, oh God, I guess I have to go with this one now. Even though I was like the least prepared to tackle that one. And it was a show called Twindigenous, loosely based on, very, very loosely based on the lives of myself and my sister, because we are Indigenous twins. And I remember like there being like twin fever in kids media when I was a kid. Like that was like the Age American Ashley and the 98 Parent Trap, and of course Sister. Like there was so much like fascination with twins. But like I do think, maybe I'm a little biased, but I do think there's a interesting element there where people have certain expectations of you as twins. Like, are you just alike? Are you total opposites? And then you really get to kind of paint within those expectations and prove them wrong, and also have this really intense bond as siblings. So I wanted to do that, but I wanted, again, to make them Indigenous. And in this story, they were moving from a reservation to an urban environment. And they were a little anxious about, again, how they were going to fit in. They were middle schoolers, so they really wanted to stand out, but not stand out too much. Like all those preteen girl insecurities, it really leaned into that. And ultimately the girls find some friends. They also find some maybe people that aren't as nice, but they triumph and they create a podcast, I believe is, yeah.
nice.
So they create a little platform for themselves. I'm now noticing the similarities and themes between that and my submission piece. But these kids are older and have different interests for sure.
They do stand up at the talent show.
Right. But it was really fun to think about, okay, how are these two sisters similar and how are they different? Because that was something, yeah, people were always misunderstanding about me and my sister growing up. Even now, we're in our 30s and people still think we're either attached at the hip or total opposites. And it's really somewhere in between, you know.
Nice.
I think similarly to everyone, blah blah blah. The things that have stuck with me, or like kind of everything, because it was I came into it not knowing how to write for kids. I had zero knowledge beyond like sketch comedy writing, and then I came out of it with like a fully written thing, and I knew how to do everything, or like everything, quote unquote, I guess. I definitely had the tools to find the information I needed for everything I would encounter later on when I started actually working. Breaking down everything into threes, as I said earlier, really stuck with me. Oh, and then also I guess I wanted to, whatever, not that, shout out to Sophie Solomon, and I think in general, who's like the workshop coordinator when I was there. And then in general, everybody else who was in my network, like when I first started working, I would do a lot of messaging people asking like, hey, how much did you get paid for this thing that you wrote for, just to figure out like what I should be asking for. Because also pay was totally, I had no idea. Because like to me, like $5,000 for one script was like, I can't believe people get paid this. This feels criminal. But then like later on finding out like, oh, that's actually maybe kind of like underpaying for like within the scope of television, because union, et cetera, which is maybe changing right now.
More on that in a minute. Yeah, I wrote it up. More on that in a minute.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I don't know anything. To be upfront, I no clue what's happening. Beyond like I've signed so many letters. That's kind of but my script that I wrote as part of the workshop, also I think ended up staying on theme to my sample in like a less, because my sample is called Wormhole, but it didn't have like a interdimensional thing in it. But then my sample was another piece of interdimensional, like this kid finds a door that leads to other. I don't know. But like the premise of it was a kid who's like the host of a Mr. Rogers type TV show, just like loses her sock, and then she like flips out and like starts which incites her trying to explore the bounds of the world for the first time. Yeah, and it's also about like gender stuff. It was my first genderqueer piece of writing, I guess, or that was like very explicitly like, this is about being genderqueer, maybe. It was my soft launch. My soft launch of my new gender. Yeah.
Was the how about like getting notes and feedback? Like my cohort was amazing. For like I would do the thing where we have our meeting, 3 hours on, I think Monday. Yeah, 3 hours of Mondays or Tuesdays. We have a 3-hour meeting Mondays, and then I would send out like a Zoom link so we could kind of talk shop afterwards, just amongst the fellows. And for the most part, it was like, okay, what did you really grasp onto? Can you help me understand this? What was the name of that show that Susan mentioned? Did you all have something like that? How did you work with your cohort, who each have their own projects they're working on?
I feel like I was the opposite of you, where like every time we would go out to hang out afterwards, and I don't think I contributed anything useful or tried directing the conversation anywhere towards kids media. I think I was almost like, so who are you dating? Or like, what's your personal life like? Or do you have a good relationship with your girlfriend? That's all I wanted to know. But I love them. Yeah, everyone was really cool. Yeah.
Well, you were
Yeah.
to that point, just to, on that quick, was it in person when you were in the
Ours was in
fellowship?
person. Yeah.
So did you have people
And so
flying in from wherever they were
we
from?
did. We had like a couple
Wow.
people flying in from
Wow.
California. I forget if they were staying somewhere for the duration. I think there were people flying back and forth.
Hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm still in touch with people and still friends with people and stuff like that.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember if I know we had like the office hours on Thursdays, I think.
Thursdays,
So
yep.
like, yeah. And then we weren't very like much like always chatting. I think we had a group chat, but afterwards, me and like a few of them we started meeting weekly, and like that continued for a long time. Especially me and two of the other fellows. So like it became like sort of a writing group, and um I think the nicest part was just like having people to be like, oh, we're never gonna make it. Like this is gonna like what
Yeah.
are we doing wrong? Like we're the only ones who didn't get agents. And like there's something nice about like struggling alongside people in the journey. And then anytime you get like your first script or something, it's just like you just feel so excited for each other and like maybe a little jealous too, but like mostly like it's just nice to be able it's such an emotional thing, like especially when it ends. And there's a lot of expectations and stuff like that, like this is a great opportunity, like I got to do something great with it. So I it was just nice to have people to do that with, like after it ended.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience. There were 6 of us in our cohort. I was literally the only one that didn't live in California, and I was living in North Carolina at the time. But thankfully, we all got to fly in for our final event in New York. And so I have got to meet everyone in person. But like every once in a while, they'd be like, "We're gonna do a meetup in person," and I couldn't go, so that was sad. But my group is so supportive of each other. We still have an ongoing WhatsApp chat that we send messages in, and we will occasionally like, let's all get together and do a Zoom. But yeah, like you said, like it was great to like have people to commiserate with, get feedback from. Yeah, I just feel real that I've done like different programs, different things, and I always feel like the most valuable thing that I take away is you go into it thinking it's going to be like the opportunity of it all. It's not. It's the people that you meet for sure.
Yeah, getting the thing is never the thing.
Right.
It's also the opportunities you can find within it. Yeah, my cohort's pretty amazing, and people come from with different backgrounds and different perspectives. And I was like the joke pitch guy, or I would constantly find myself be like, oh, you could have a punchline here, you could kind of punchline that, or if you really want to hurt the kid, we could do this. So I had to learn to stop saying hurt the kid, which is like, if you really want to raise the stakes, let's say that.
Can you
There
give
you
us your top 3 hurt the kid pitches?
Yeah, if you really want to hurt the kid, one was a Arthur fist. You actually show the impact. I was arcane one, and the pilot of Arcane. There's a big fight with kids. Come on.
I don't remember, but yeah.
You don't remember? I just got into
zero
it.
recollection.
I'm a poser, so I'm new to the series. But back to the money conversation. I was Diana, I saw your name on the PBS WGA negotiations that happened, like have been happening the last few months. So I saw you on the Zoom, a couple of Zooms, and I want to say Chrissy Ferraro and Susan Kim and Josh Vasquez. They've been like instrumental in keeping us up to date. A few other folks whose names I'm forgetting right now. Please forgive me. But they've been instrumental in keeping us up to date, because the discrepancy was PBS was paying live action writers a higher rate than animation writers. So that was I forget what the rate, maybe it was 6K to 5K, or maybe slightly over 6 to slightly around 5. Because I remember I had my prior fellowship was like on paper could have been paid more for a finished children's script, which actually got on the air. And so I was asking questions about like, okay, cool. How do I understand where the finances come into play once we have the craft and the good arc of story and whatnot? So it was really cool to be in the room with the WGA folks and just hanging out for a while in a very casual manner to understand how veterans have dealt with this industry discrepancy, payment discrepancy, and what, for me as someone newer coming into children's writing and children's media, where I should be starting as opposed to where I maybe started. Yeah, both for getting paid and for the expected, Diane, to your point earlier, if the assignment is, okay, we'll give you $6,000 for 2 drafts and a final, but it seems that the work has been creeping up, the expectations to maybe be, okay, 2 drafts, a revised second draft, a revised third draft, a final, then a final polish. Okay, then one more last look. So it seems like the amount of work, the compensation structure hasn't been one-to-one with the amount of work that goes into scripts. And I'm just like really, really thankful for the committee and for both sides to work it out, but also for, Susan and Chrissy and Josh Vasquez keeping us informed at the industry and what's happening at a higher level.
Yeah, totally. I mean, they did like a great job, and I feel like Leah and Susan and everyone, they like really kept in the loop like newer writers like myself and other people. Because like I'm not part of the WGA yet. But it was nice to know like what could be like one day if I am a member and stuff like that. And it's nice like for the veteran writers to understand the perspectives of people coming up. And I think too, when you're like newer to this, you're just happy to get scripts, so you're not like, I wonder if this isn't quite right. So it was just a good reminder for me to be like we all feel very lucky and blessed to be in this industry and to get work, but like also we should be treated fairly, and we can't forget like that part of it. Like there is fairness, and a lot of times I just say yes without even checking like how much will you pay me. So this is like, it's all a good reminder, like it has to be fair.
That's the problem with doing stuff you love. You're like,
I
oh,
know.
yeah.
Well, because we're all like in the improv and sketch and comedy scenes, and if they like this year I've started to get maybe once in a while. I never got paid though, but someone said they were going to pay me $50 to do stand up, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I need it, because like we don't do any of this for money. Like no one expects to get money from improv or any of that stuff. So like I don't know, you're just like happy to even have something that's comedy adjacent. So sometimes it just feels so exciting and fun that you forget like, wait, I have to survive on this salary. And so yeah.
Yeah, and the standard for a lot of improv shows for years is like, okay, we'll get you 2 drink tickets.
Yeah.
So I don't want to walk into like Frederator and be like, all right, will you give me 3 drink tickets?
Yeah. I will do this for 3 drinks.
I will do this for 3 drink tickets. Just let me get whiskey and I'll be fine. No, I don't drink no more. But yeah, cool. To put a pin in that conversation, we're almost at about the hour mark. This is more of a general question. How do each of you stay on top of your writing and keep materials fresh? I'll start. Being on a character team, I'm on a character team at UCB, and every month we essentially create these like weekend update type characters. And so we're in, I think, month 9 or month 10. Our best of show will be like our 10th, maybe not. So I've made essentially 9 3 to 5 minute pieces over the last year, and that a couple of them are influenced by children's media. Other than that, that's like having a deadline. A month, there's 12 of us on the team, and so everyone's bringing 3 pitches and then crafting pretty much a solo sketch every month. And that's been it's fulfilling, and you get to perform them and get immediate feedback on it. And secondly, every day I write 5 dumb ideas. So I have this giant Google Doc that's like 2,500 deep. And so some of it's like, hey, here's like a situation I'd like to explore. Here's a one-liner joke. Here's an emotion I'm exploring. It's just arbitrary, but every day I have to write something in the Google Doc. It's to a point now where I load it up, I hit enter. It takes like 3 seconds to push all the other numbers down, and then I type out the whatever. So that is a thing I just have to keep on top of.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is something, and I think a lot of people will resonate with this, but staying on top of things and holding myself accountable for writing is extremely difficult. I have pretty severe ADHD, and I like a productivity complex as well. Like it's really, really tough. Like I really beat myself up about how much I don't get done. And because of my ADHD, like I thrive on procrastination. Like that's when I do my best work, but it's so stressful. Like every time when I was doing the fellowship, the night before something was due, I was like literally up all night, cranking it out and in a state of delirium. So half of it probably didn't make sense. And then sometimes it would like be amazing, and people were like, "Oh my god, that was amazing," and I couldn't tell you a thing about it.
What happened? I did what?
Exactly. But things I have found that have helped is finding people. Like I used to have a Zoom meeting once a week with a writing friend, and we would just. Can you still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, we would have like writing accountability meetings. Sounds like a simple thing, but I bought myself a notebook that I use only for writing. I don't take notes in it. I don't jot anything else down. I use it only for writing. And then I've come up with like a template for each page that helps me plan things out. And then in the very back of the book, I have like an ongoing list of jokes that I should really crack open again and add to. But yeah, I'm constantly opening. If I think of something on the street, I'll take out my phone, jot it down in a notes app or a Google Doc or something. And it's something I was doing for a while because like primarily I do improv and sketch, but primarily I enjoy character comedy. And I felt really stagnant in that, especially in kind of like the later days of the pandemic where things were kind of starting up again, but not quite. And so I started doing these character challenges where I would say, okay, the month of April, I'm going to do a new character every day, no matter what. And of course, it was more like 27 days out of 31 days or however many days are in April. I forget right now, but I think it's 30. I don't know. Anyway, but whatever month it was, I would try my best to come up with a new character every day. And I cranked out so much stuff. Some misses, of course, with that amount of quantity. But some stuff like really kind of took off and really, just did well. And I felt really good about. And if I had not set that cuckoo challenge for myself to come up with something every day, I would have nothing. So making those little challenges for yourself and putting out there, like having the accountability of like, I have to post it today before the clock strikes midnight. But having that accountability for that really helped me.
Awesome.
I can go.
Yeah, please.
Go.
You're remaining. Go ahead.
Oh shit! I totally. That's so funny. Yeah, I think it depends on what I'm writing. In terms of like what, because when I was doing sketch comedy, I was in like a group, and so there were pitch meetings, and then I was just churning stuff out for the pitch meetings. In general, I think, and I think similarly for kids TV stuff, I was just like meeting a deadline, and it was like, oh, if I have to have like pitches by this date, like I will have that many pitches. I think for me, like third party deadlines end up playing like a very important role of like someone else is forcing me to, or like I agreed to allow someone else to force me to. And then with like playwriting, I was also in school for playwriting, so I had external deadlines. But then in general, I think for that, and I think it applies to like other stuff, but it feels like less noticeable. But I think just like making sure I'm reading a lot mostly, and like exposing myself to like a lot of new thought and content, because I find myself becoming the most stale or repetitive when I'm kind of just watching YouTube videos of people playing board games or whatever. Or like if I'm just like, yeah, if I'm in a state of I'm rewatching Adventure Time for the 40th time, like that's when I start repeating jokes. I'm like, oh, I reread something from 3 years ago. Yeah, so I think just varied media intake.
Awesome. Diana, did you go on this one yet?
I don't think so, unless I spoke and I forgot maybe. But
No, I think
No, I don't think you did.
I'm sorry, that's my fault.
I
You're the
don't know,
last.
but I felt like I had said
I
too
was
much,
like,
and I was
what?
like, let me just lay low for a little.
I'm sorry, I confused that you were the last person to speak before I asked the question. So I thought
That's what I mean. I was like, this is too much. Just keep quiet. But yeah, everything they said, it's so funny, the deadline thing, because sometimes I will just, if I feel like I'm being too like lazy or something, or like unfresh, as we were talking about, I'll just find something to enter, like a contest or like a fellowship or something, just to force myself to write something for it. Or yeah, like if I know other people, like I'll take a class or something like that, just so like I can, if I know that a teacher wants something by a due date, I'll do it. So I'll just, that way I can, and in like 2 months I'll have a sample or something. And then to stay fresh, yeah, like what everyone was saying, I go through all my old notes, like you could read your old diaries, like to get ideas. And then I'm probably on Instagram too much, but I just save anything that's remotely interesting, and then I'll just look through my saved and be like, popcorn tree decorations. Like, is that something? Yeah, sometimes just to like get ideas and things like that. I used to work in like magazines, and so like a lot of coming up with ideas was turning to Instagram and seeing what people are talking about. So I kind of try to do that now in this job as well.
yeah, like lookbooks. Like Instagram is sort of a lookbook where you're
Exactly. Yeah.
looking at
Because
various
like if
clips
people are
and stuff.
talking about stuff in social media, and then you notice your friend groups are talking about it, and then I don't know, something like I always like to look for trends and like what's going on, like why is everyone so into fleece right now, or like is there a bigger story here? So yeah, stuff like that.
It's like, oh, Jinkos are back. Let's hang out. Just go hang out in Williamsburg for a bit. And then he'll be like, oh, okay, cool. Okay, I guess it has been 20 years since I wore my Johnny Blaze and Jinko jeans and the tattered bottoms. Okay, cool. Thrift shops are in cycles too. Awesome. Well, thank you all for speaking and chatting on this. I hope that this can be a valuable resource to future children's writing fellows, people who are curious about our writing and ourselves, as well as for us to just copy paste a link instead of giving a whole hour to a stranger. So no, but yeah, it's been fun and fulfilling to be able to talk to people both one-on-one individually and all who are curious about, let's say, writing for Sesame Workshop, curious about sketch comedy, curious about the worlds that I think we largely overlap and write from and come from, or wanting to combine those two worlds. And it's been fulfilling to have those one-on-one conversations, and hope that we can all serve as a resource in this dialogue, should you be curious about writing for children. Yeah, any final words, promos, anything?
Just write from the heart. Because yeah, a lot of people ask me for advice, and like that's literally all I had to tell them was just write from the heart. Like,
But whose heart? I
don't
want
know
to
the
get
magic spot. Yeah, no, that's, yeah. I don't know about you all, but like we got so much requests. My group, my cohort did. Like, how do I get into the fellowship? And it's like, I don't have the magic words. just write from the heart.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I think like genuinely try to get to know people. Like sometimes people, if like you meet them and they're like, you could tell they just want to get, I have nothing to give, first of all. Like I wish I had something. I can barely give stuff to myself. But I think like, yeah, like the make meaningful connections, like when you go to like a CMA event or something, just like try to make buddies, like instead of like we all need work though, but like just see if you can make genuine connections and be yourself and stuff. That like always helps, I think. Anytime I've encountered all of you, like I remember your twin, when you were talking about the twin stuff at the Sesame thing, I was there in the background, not in a creepy way, and like I just remember it stood out so much. Or like whenever I've talked to all of you, like it just feels so nice to just see like the real people and stuff like that.
Yeah, when you just asked this question, my impulse was to say like a monosyllabic onomatopoeia, like splat or bang. But I think similarly, be nice, don't be mean.
Yeah.
I'm gonna edit this so it's just bang, and then that's
I
the end
love
of the
that.
show.
That was my first draft, best draft.
Forget journalistic integrity. I just joke machine. Also, yeah, and also like we all crack jokes, and you know when we hang out, talk about different things. So I appreciate we're putting on our like advice cap, even because that's what we have to give. You know, we're not hiring people for our respective rooms, but we hope that you all can take viewers out there can take something from this. And all right, yeah, well, thanks for coming, thanks for watching, and I'll tag you all on LinkedIn. I just found out you can add to a portfolio on LinkedIn, so I'll put this on YouTube and then link to it, and we'll all get a nice pat on the back for ourselves for giving back on this Sunday. All right, thanks for tuning in. We'll see y'all later. Be kind.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Dayton Tesfagiorgis. Last thing I will add, the script I wrote for Sesame Street is it's called Zach, Your Neighborhood DJ. It's about a kid who's 10 years old. He's a DJ and he has ADHD and loves being involved with his community so much he neglects his own mental health and wellness. So you get to see Zach explore different events in his community of Brooklyn that require different types of music and genres. He gets to learn a little bit about culture through music, and then also has to remember to be a regular sixth grader. So that's the show I wrote with Sesame Workshop this year. And thanks for watching. Really appreciate y'all spending the time here with my guests, with myself, and being here to watch more about kids media. Stay happy. Make yourself happy. I don't know. Keep writing. That's all. That's the advice we can. Keep writing. Keep exploring emotions. That help you grow as a writer and hopefully writer performer. Deja comedy.